Hey guys, Straight Razor Revolution here. I just got this new Thiers Issard that I showed in my last video, and the blade had a bit of a frown in it, so today I'm going to be honing it up, trying to get that little bit of a frown out, get the blade nice and straight, and see if we can't get this joker shave ready. Alright, I'll be using mostly Sharpener stones, the ceramic bonded stones. I'll be using a progression of 1K, probably jump straight to my 6K King because it cuts so aggressively and fast, and it's really creamy and smooth, so it works out those 1K scratches pretty easily. From there I'll be moving to an 8K Sharpener, and then finally a 15K. It's 12K really, but with slurry, 15K on water, so it's about a 12 to 15K progression. It's the M5. I really love that stone because it's nice and hard, it's a beautiful finisher, and from there I can go straight to my strop and have the smoothest shave I've ever been able to get. Alright, so I'm just going to throw a little bit of tape on the spine, even though it's a brand new razor. I just don't want to, you know, I want to stay away from getting heavy hone wear on the spine, and also, you know, I feel like that little bit of a build up on the spine with the electrical tape gives me a nice angle on the stone. So I'll go ahead and do that now. You know, I learned this little trick from GS6 Guns on YouTube and Straight Razor Place. Kind of drape the tape over your hand here. And I'll just be using one layer because it is a new razor. Just get it nice and even over the spine, and then go ahead and trim it off. And I'll put that aside for later. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead, there's a bit of a bevel because I was messing around with it last night, but I'll go ahead and kill the edge. And after I reset the bevel, I will change the tape out again one more time, because after you set the bevel, you change the tape out. Alright? One of the reasons I love these Sharpener stones is that they're so aggressive. Like, they cut really nice. The cutting particles that are bonded into the ceramic are very, very uniform, and they're packed in there, so it's a real aggressive cutter, but it has a real smooth feel. They're really fast, and once you get to know the stone, in my opinion, there's nothing like it. I'll be using a DMT, a Thiers Issard diamond plate to generate a slurry on my 1K, possibly my 6K as well. Works pretty good because these DMTs, you know, the stones are so hard that it doesn't take off a whole lot. Keeps them nice and flat, and it gives me a good slurry. I just like to make sure I run it down my sides as well. Keep my edges nice and rounded. I like a thicker slurry, so I go ahead and get a nice little bit of it on there, and then get it off the DMT onto my stone. Alright, we're good to go. I kind of use a modified method, Lynn Abrams' circle method, mixed with a little bit of Japan Blade from YouTube's axe method. I'll just go back and forth a little bit. I'll do some circles, I'll do some X strokes, you know, I'll maybe do some straight pushes, maybe some swoopers. That's what I call them, swoopers. I also use this little, it's a diamond sharpener that I got with a Smith & Wesson Homeland Security knife. It's a bit worn out, so it works really good for generating slurry on my higher stones because it's so smooth. It generates a really nice slurry without wearing out my stone or scratching it up. The one thing that I have noticed with this one, if you'll notice, the slurry it's generating is a bit darker. And I think that's because it's, you know, maybe the metal is not as high quality as like the Thiers Issard or the Duo Sharp, and it actually hones the metal off, I think. I'm not sure. Alright, so let's get started. I'll go ahead and kill the edge on the corner of my stone. Gently though. They don't want to cause any chips or cracks or do anything crazy. So the edge is effectively dead. You know, I couldn't shave or cut any hair with that, so we're good to go. So like I said, I'll do a modified version of Lynn Abrams' circle method and Japan Blade's axe method. So I like to start out with the circles, which I'll do now. Do 40 circles clockwise, 40 circles counterclockwise. Alright, 40 circles. I'll do a couple of X strokes, just to do some cleanup swoops, cleanup strokes, heel forward. I like to do, in this beginning phase I'll use a moderate amount of pressure. It's hard to say how many pounds, but I do brace down a little bit on the blade with a bit of a blade leading twist on the spine, because you hold it right here, and with my two fingers I'll kind of twist it downwards, just gently, not enough to distort the metal, but just enough to make sure that I've got pressure on the cutting edge. And I'm looking for my cutting edge to be in constant contact with the stone. And I'm watching that slurry. See the straight line of the slurry? It means that most of my cutting edge is in pretty good contact with the stone. And as I'm doing these X strokes, I'm constantly applying less and less pressure. I'm trying to get rid of those, heavy pressure scratch marks in my bevel. And as I go, I'll reduce the consistency of my slurry and also the pressure on my blade. I'm not just looking for the slurry to tell me things, I'm looking for my fingers to tell me things. I'm looking for, the feedback from the blade in my hand and in my ears, the sound of it, the feel of it, all of that. Alright, I'm going to do a few more circles with less pressure this time. If you look at the slurry, how straight it's staying in front of my cutting edge, I can tell that my bevel is starting to get where I want it to be. I'm using less pressure this time. More cleanup strokes. Sometimes you can even lead a toe leading stroke in. It's a bit more difficult to do and harder to get used to, but you can do it. You don't really see a lot of people doing it. I don't know why. It's just as effective as a heel leading stroke. I think probably because it's harder to get used to. It feels less comfortable in your hand, but you can do it. Especially I found with a couple of my blades that are called smiling blades, you know, where the heel and the toe, or the bevel of the heel and the toe are up higher than the center of the blade, like a smile or a U. And some of those blades, if you place them flat on the hone, and you notice you press down on your heel or your toe, and the whole thing is not flat and even on the stone. Because either the blade is slightly warped, or because of the smile, only one section can come in contact at a time. So in those cases, you know, people often do what's called a rolling X, where you start like this, and as you move across the hone, you kind of do this motion. But what I found works pretty good is to do a toe leading stroke like this, and I'll put a little bit of pressure on the front of the blade just to balance it, and it gets that front of the blade on there, and then I'll lead into my stroke like this. And as I come to the back of the blade, I'll then put pressure on this one to lift my toe up, and then I'll get the heel end too. So it works pretty good for me. It's whatever works for you. You know, you got to develop your own style and technique. You know, take some tips from the hone meisters on YouTube or the forums that you're a part of. But you know, overall, you got to get used to honing. You got to learn your own techniques. You got to find out what works for you. Okay, so judging from the way my slurry is reacting with my blade, it's riding up onto the blade. It's undercutting, and it feels pretty smooth. It feels pretty much like it's gliding across the 1K, as much as a 1K can feel like that anyway. So I'm going to start doing a few axe strokes at this point, and probably go ahead and clean off my hone after that, reduce my slurry to probably just water, and do a few circles, a few X strokes to clean them up, and then move on to my 6K. Okay, here we go. And I'm not really putting much pressure on the blade at all. I'm just, you know, letting my fingers balance and the weight of the blade do the cutting. I'm doing 5 one way, 5 the other, and then I'm reducing the amount of strokes I take as I cycle through. It's undercutting nicely. It's probably close to bevel set right now. And after I get done with these 2 strokes on this side, I'll do a few cleanup strokes, clean off my hone, and I'll be done. Alright, let's do some cleanup strokes here. And you know, at this point I'm putting very little pressure on the blade, if any. It's undercutting nicely, so I know that my bevel is most likely set, but I'm going to go ahead and do the water only passes to go ahead and try to reduce the 1K scratches as much as I can to prepare for the 6K. I find it easier to do, you know, passes with the least amount of pressure if I'm using one hand only. You see a lot of guys, you know, using their other finger to balance, and I do that too sometimes. It's hard to say which one I can achieve less pressure on a pass with, you know, one hand or either, you know, the other hand guiding. It definitely feels like a smoother pass if I have 2 fingers on it, but I feel like I can get less pressure with just one hand. It's important to have that heel leading stroke when you're using one hand because A, it helps you to keep consistent pressure and contact with the hone, but B, it lets your stroke be less kind of jerky. You can also notice that as you place your blade onto the hone, the water will almost disperse and ride up once your bevel is set. If you look, see how in front of the blade the water dispersed and the actual bevel was able to disperse the water? To me, that's a good sign that the bevel is like either set or very close to being set where you want it to be. See how it does that? it almost disperses the water. What it's doing is it's undercutting, it's letting it ride up on the blade already. So I know that I'm there. Okay, I'm going to call that good. Clean off my hone. Get rid of a lot of that metal, the honed off metal. And I'm going to go ahead and do some passes with water only. And I'll clean off my blade to get rid of that slurry grit from as much of it as I can. It's important to keep your blade clean as you move up through the grits, because you don't want to cross-contaminate your grits. When you're in a 6K, you don't want a 1K scratch coming onto the blade as you're trying to polish out those 1K scratches. Okay, so I'm going to start with water only here, and I'm going to do some circles. Probably not 40 circles this time, probably only 20 with almost no pressure. Right, here we go. Alright, some cleanup strokes. And I can tell by how the blade's feeling that the bevel is most likely set uniformly. Let's not forget too that the other thing I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to hone out that bit of a frown that came from the factory. This is a Thiers Issard blade, so the metal's really hard. Like the C135 carbon steel is, you know, it's a bear to hone. Steel's hard, but you know, aside from the honing difficulty, or you know, the fact that you have to do a lot of extra strokes to get your blade where you want it to be, once it actually has the bevel set and you've worked through your progression properly and you have an actual shaving, you know, cutting shave ready edge, it lasts a long time. You know, you can have a C135 shave ready edge last for, you know, depending on the consistency of your beard hair and how you prep, you know, how often you shave, it maybe last a year before you have to go back to the hones with just stropping and, you know, mild maintenance of the edge, unless you damage it, of course. Okay, so that feels pretty good. I'm going to do some no pressure circles now, some pretty looping circles I like to do for my finish up. And a couple more cleanup strokes. I'll probably finish up with some axe strokes. Blade is undercutting pretty nicely at this point. You can tell by how straight that slurry line is that the whole blade is coming into contact with the hone. See how straight it is? You know, I've taken a lot from Lynn Abrams and GS6 guns, and even Anthony Esposito, the stallion. You know, I like to watch his videos. I subscribe to his channel. I just like his style, I guess. He's like, you know, a regular guy. He doesn't, you know, a lot of these people on these forums, man, they have airs about them, and they try to act, you know, all posh, like they know more than the next guy, and everybody's got an opinion, and, you know, everybody has something to say about what you're doing, and, you know, there's a lot of hero worship in these forums, I've noticed. You know, people, you know, in the crowd with their lighters lit for their Honemeister heroes and their know-it-all moderators, what have you. Which is okay, I guess, but I mean, let's face it, we're shaving here. This is all about shaving, you know what I mean? So, you know, everybody wants to act like they're a gentleman, but the minute you say something somebody doesn't like, your posts are getting blocked, your, you know, profile's getting banned or suspended, and, you know, it's just, it's stupid. We're shaving here, guys. We're trying to help each other learn how to hone. We're trying to help each other, you know, learn tips for shaving and encourage people to join and stay. That's all it is. I'm going to go ahead and clean my hone off again. And I'm going to finish up with a couple very, very, very light axe strokes. Okay, here we go. And that's it. We're done with the 1K. I'm going to go ahead and test the bevel. You know, I don't get into that whole microscope. Let's throw it under the 900 magnification. I don't even use a 10x loupe or anything, illuminated LED, none of that garbage, dude. Like, you know, barbers and gentlemen from the, you know, 1800s and the 1900s, they didn't have any of that stuff, and they were able to perfectly maintain shave ready, sharp edges all the time. You know, there's all these tests out there, the hanging hair test and the thumb pad test. It's all well and good, but you have to acquire a feel for that, and even that has a learning curve. So, you know, I don't assign to those beliefs or practices very much. You know, I do a hanging hair every now and then just to get a general feel. But that's, you know, it doesn't always prove that you're shave ready. It just proves that your blade is cutting a single strand of hair. That's it. You know. You know, I just hone, and one thing I do is, you know, the fingernail test to see if my bevel is gripping everywhere. And I'll do two things. I'll see if it, you know, if it grips and bites as it's cutting across the nail, which it is, and it feels pretty consistent. It doesn't feel jaggedy. It's biting in. And then I'll also do a angle grip test. So I'll see if it, you know, with just the weight of the blade on a very steep angle on my fingernail, if it's sharp enough and the bevel set enough to keep the blade from rocking and sliding off my fingernail. So that's what I do. If it's doing that, I know that the bevel is set, because without a bevel it would not balance on my fingernail, it would not grip in, it would not hold itself from falling, and it's biting in pretty nicely everywhere. Pretty good. Alright. And we're moving on to the 6K. I use a 6K King. I just really like the way it acts, the way it feels. I like the way it hones. It's nice and creamy, yet, you know, plenty abrasive. This one gets plenty of use, I assure you. It's really nice. I just love it. I might actually get a whole series of King stones, whatever they have out. I haven't seen a whole bunch of higher grit ones. I've seen, you know, 6s and 8s and 4s and a couple lower ones. But this one's not as much like the Shaptons, meaning that you can't just spray the top of it. You can, but this one will absorb water, unlike my Shaptons, which won't really absorb much water, if any. This one will absorb a little bit. So you have to keep it pretty good and lubricated. I don't soak my stones. I just feel like, you know, these types of ceramic stones, you don't really need to soak them like that. You know, it says it right on the box. People do it anyway, but I think that, you know, it's habits die hard, or what have you. So I'll go ahead and generate a bit of a slurry with this one as well. I think this DMT is a bit abrasive for my 6K, but I still do it anyway. It keeps it nice and flat. But what I do afterwards is I'll take my more refined, smaller DMT, and I'll go over it with that a little bit. But this generates a really fast slurry, this one DMT. This is a wore out 120 micron. I just bought it. I bought it from the Whip Dog. They have really good prices on items like that because my Duo Sharp got broken. It's brand new Duo Sharp. You know, they're not cheap, but they're not expensive. got broken. It was a fine, extra fine duo sharp. It got broken, whatever. I didn't feel like dropping a bunch of money on another item that might get broken, so I went ahead and got this 120 micron dia sharp that's been kind of worn out from Larry at the Whip Dog. Love Larry, he's a great guy, knows his stuff. He, you know, I contact him all the time. I've put together several brushes of my own. You know, I use his stuff, man. I bought some brushes from him that were already assembled. Matter of fact, I have a synthetic brush coming in the mail. Probably be here Monday. Probably make a video of me putting together that that knot with a new handle. So be looking for that. Alright, smooth out some of those 120 micron marks. Get rid of any very steep edges off the face of my hone. It's important to have rounded or even, you know, 45 degree or chamfered edges. That way your cutting edge doesn't hit any very sharp corners, no 90s, you know, cause any nicks or chips in your blade that you didn't need to have. You could have avoided with a little bit of hone prep. This one, man, this thing generates slurry fast, but it cuts fast. It's a hard stone, but it's so smooth and creamy. I just love it. I'll probably get another one of these. I'll probably always do my 6K on Kings.